Former Florida State wide receiver Hykeem Williams is in the transfer portal. He could go where he wants, but 2 of his visits are going to be to Florida State rivals? Really?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. We have a show today that is going to be a lot about rivalries and the transfer portal in a lot of different ways. Mixed in the middle, NFL draft, as I talk about Azareye'h Thomas and Joshua Farmer, among other FSU players. At the end, you'll like it if you stick it around, because I'm going to throw Florida under the bus and put it in reverse and talk about an up or down situation for Miami. But at the top, it is all about the transfer portal and one specific guy that left Florida State. That is Hykeem Williams. Once you enter the portal, you can go where you want. That's fine. There are still lines that are touchy. When you go from one school to another and it is a rival you go to, it's iffy. If you visit a couple of them before making your final decision, makes you wonder. And finally, what are the impacts if it ends up happening? So there are a lot of different scenarios here, so let me give you the overview. Syracuse is going to get a visit from Hykeem Williams, and then allegedly, Hykeem Williams will make a trip to Miami. If he does or doesn't, I don't know, but that's been discussed at multiple spots. You can go look it up. This is interesting from a couple of perspectives. Number one, let me give you my take, and then I have a couple of questions for Florida State fans. Before I do this, take your homer hat off. Be objective. It will not be easy what I'm about to ask, but I have a point to make. So just remember that before I get to that question that I asked you. Number one here, again, Hykeem can go where he wants. That's his business. But it is not good business for Florida State, not that that's his concern, if he goes to Syracuse, and here's why. Fran Brown, along with Kirby Smart, Marcus Freeman, 2 or 3 other guys in college football, Mario Cristobal, Dan Lanning, there are a few others. They're elite recruiters. They don't need any extra help. They just have a knack for dealing with young people in general, and they put in the effort. Mike Norvell is not a very good recruiter historically. I don't know why, because he's so personable, but the numbers are the numbers. Whatever they do is not working, at least up until this point. Now, they've improved, but after a 2-10 season, I don't know how much we're going to see in terms of actual results unless they win big this next year, and I'm not sure about it. So any advantage for your rival is not good. Here's the backdrop. For those that do not remember, Hykeem Williams is from Stranahan High School in Fort Lauderdale, elite recruit that everybody offered. It is a perception deal. If he goes to Syracuse, and Fran Brown is already killing it in the state of Florida, beating FSU for multiple players, by the way. Kids, they want it. No ifs, no ands, no buts. If he gets Hykeem and he goes up there and balls out this year, it is bad news bears for Florida State. They don't need to add any gas to that fire that is Syracuse recruiting in the state of Florida. I don't know if Syracuse is going to be that great this year. I've spoken to Jackson Holzer of Locked On Syracuse about this. Their schedule is brutal as compared to last year. They're going to be a 6-6 football team, 7-5, something like that, more than likely. But they might actually be better in some ways. It's ironic, but I digress. That's their problem. Adding Hykeem Williams wouldn't hurt, though. At least you'd have another thoroughbred, 6'2", 215 pounds. And when he sets his mind to it, remember that, ironically, that play he had against Syracuse a couple of years ago? The long touchdown, short pass, catches it, looks upfield, finds a small sliver, and he gone. That is the kind of player that FSU fans wanted to see. It just never really came to fruition. I believe he only had 1 touchdown again last year. To make a long story short, he was a lot of unfinished business and a whole lot of time spent in the training room. Hykeem couldn't stay healthy. He wasn't consistent. I don't think he was the greatest route runner, and quite frankly, I don't think he was coached that well at Florida State. I don't. And I understand that he probably just wanted a new place of scenery, just for whatever reason. And maybe going out of state's good for him. But again, that is not good news if he goes to Syracuse. And it's even worse if he goes to Miami. Here's the deal. There are two programs in the country that I put an asterisk by in terms of what their upside is. It's the highest, but it also comes with major pitfalls. So Southern Cal and Miami, what do they have in common? They're in cities where the recruiting is really wild year to year. It makes the stock market look consistent. When those schools get the right coach there, it can go bananas. But when it falls off, it also falls off like a cliff. You don't know. But it doesn't take much to light that fire. Not saying that Hykeem Williams is the answer for Miami, but do consider the following. Mario Cristobal is bringing in several receivers, or at least trying. Trevor Pena, ironically, from Syracuse being one of them. Really good player. But they are desperate for receiver help, and he didn't plan very well here, which is a bit surprising. It's the one thing he does pretty well with roster management. They did not plan well at wide receiver. JoJo Trader, Nikar is coming back to Miami, so good for them, but they don't have a boundary they can trust. They don't have a flanker they can trust, and they don't have a slot they can trust. They're not in a good spot. By the way, good luck to them. They played Notre Dame game 1, and their whole secondary has NFL talent. But Florida State doesn't want to hand them a gift like Hykeem Williams. Who knows? Maybe he hits. When Miami or USC, to use both of them as a reference, win, it's because the elite talent stays home. Once that mantra starts, it's hard. Even with Mario there, a lot of the top players still leave Miami and the overall South Florida area, Palm Beach County, Broward, and Dade. A lot of them still leave. If one or two really do well, though, especially ones that have some clout, have some cachet, there's your fuse that gets lit. I don't want to see any player, for that matter, but Hykeem, especially because he played at Florida State, go to Miami and do well. But it's a free country. So I ask you the following question. Would it bother you if Hykeem went to Miami? But you also have to consider, because, again, don't be a homer here. Darrell Jackson Jr. went from Miami to Florida State. Unless you criticize that, don't criticize Hykeem going to Miami. I say again, because Darrell Jackson Jr. went from Miami to Florida State, unless you're going to criticize that, and openly, not privately, don't criticize Hykeem. I don't know Hykeem. I've been around him, but I don't know him. If he is the guy that ends up at Miami, I understand not liking it. Lay off the comments. There are too many idiots out there, especially keyboard warriors, to think they're tough behind their computer, that like to comment about kids leaving their program. Don't be that guy, especially if he goes to Miami. Don't be that guy. Anyway, if it bothers you in general, that's cool. It sucks to see a kid from your program go to your rival. Nobody, myself included, is going to dispute that. But at the same time, it's college football in 2025. It's easy, very easy, for a kid to do it. The portal's open. I don't really know what else to tell you, but it's an unfortunate scenario. The good news about the portal, and it's ironic because I mentioned this a couple of days ago on Locked On Seminoles, said Florida State needs at least one more transfer lineman. At least one more. Preferably somebody that can play guard or tackle, could move around to help them because their depth on the O-line, well, it honestly stinks. Florida State's going to get a visit from somebody I'm going to talk about next here on Locked On Seminoles. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes it easy. You can do all kinds of different prop bets. Let's just use basketball, one of my favorite sports, as an example. Assists, rebounds, halftime score, number of points for a player, and my favorite stat, because I like to shoot the ball from behind the three-point line, three-pointers. Number of makes for a guy. You can do all kinds of things. Plus, if you don't get your bet in before a game begins, you can also do live betting, which makes it pretty easy after a game starts. Don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Joshua Raymond is a player to know. He's an offensive lineman from Lake Mary High School. He spent 1 year up at Vanderbilt. If you go to Vandy, obviously academics are good. I know UCF's interested, Florida State, and there's several others as well. Here's the deal. Even in the winter portal window, it is garbage in terms of what's really available in the portal in terms of linemen. Tackle specifically, it's really bad. Like, it's awful. This is a kid that could probably play outside or inside. He may even eventually be able to play center. He's not there yet, but we'll see. I got some reps of him for practice, and when he was at Vandy, he's improved a lot from the time he was at Lake Mary. He's one of those guys that I call a late bloomer. He was a low 3-star by rivals coming out of high school. Goes to Vandy, obviously, great education. But he wants to play, and he's not going to get a chance this year. Okay. It is what it is. UCF, Florida State are two of the programs, again, among others, that are interested. Here's the play. Herb Hand is now the coach at Florida State, taking over the O-line. He knows all the local programs, and Lake Mary is just north of Orlando. It's one of the first suburbs out of the city. Okay. He didn't go after him hard when he was at UCF, and I don't even think he offered it. But he's seen the film, and they're after him now. What does that tell you? Again, late bloomer. And I stress again, the guys that can play different spots along the O-line, their value is different. You only have so many spots per position. When a young man can play multiple, for instance, corner, he can play free safety too. That's a value that you can't really put a number on. He's a good receiver, but he's an excellent punt returner as well. Those are things that increase your value, especially if you're trying to get to the National Football League, which pretty much all these young men are. Joshua Raymond is a young man that has that ability. He's athletic, he's 300 pounds, and he has 4 years of eligibility. Florida State could use another lineman, and I know he doesn't have any stats yet because he redshirted, which is typical for freshmen in the SEC, but I loved his film that I got to see, and the frame is there. I prefer him on the inside, but with his feet, I think he could play some tackle for you. And again, long-term, I think he could be a center. Never go wrong with having a guy that can help snap the football. It's the most important event that happens on every football play, because if the snap doesn't go well, you're pretty much out of luck. Florida State's going to get a visit for him, so that's some good news. Speaking of transfer news in general, a couple other things to note here. Florida State, try to get guys to come back home when they leave. Here's an example. You've got a scenario where you have a young man in Jeremiah Wilson that played at Osceola High School. For those of you familiar with the Orlando area, he's from Kissimmee, and Osceola is the only program over in that area that does anything. Like, they're dominant. I saw him in high school, practice, play, and all that. Wasn't the biggest guy, but he could play. Went to Syracuse, then transferred to Houston, had a really good last season. 2024 numbers per Pro Football Focus, started at 8 out of 12 games, 557 snaps. So your best ability is your availability. Jeremiah Wilson certainly proved that. I really like Houston's staff, but I didn't expect his grades to be this high. This is ridiculous. Again, 8 out of 12 games started. Defensive grade, 86.7. Run defense, even though he's only 5'10", 185 pounds, run defense, 77. That's impressive. Tackling, something Florida State stunk at last year, 79.3. And then, of course, if you're a DB, what's your coverage grade? 86.9. Yes, please. Florida State, sounds like the corner room didn't do as well, or maybe even the safety room, part of that was injuries. Adding at least one more DB via the portal, probably a good idea. You need more guys in there to compete. May the winner take all in fall camp for the starting position. I'm assuming he can play multiple roles, because if your grades are that high, you probably have a high football acumen. I mean, you're not going to get an 86.7 overall grade by PFF by accident. A few other numbers that really struck me. Out of the 38 passes that went Jeremiah Wilson's way, only 17 were caught, 44.7%. Again, that's elite. Stats, just for the general sake of it, 16 were solo, 18 assisted tackle for 24 overall, 3.5 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups, 4 picks, including a pick 6 per CFB stats. Bring home a Florida kid, He's got another year of eligibility. Might have 2. I can look that up. Matter of fact, while I'm thinking of it. But you're looking at a young man that has the opportunity to come back home, I would think. And if I'm wrong on the following statement, it's a really bad sign for Florida State football. You have to be able to get guys that are willing to come home and make something happen if Florida State's going to turn this around quickly. I don't know for sure if that's what's going to happen, but we'll see. Let's see here. Jeremiah Wilson. Yeah, he played a lot. He played 181 snaps as a freshman at Syracuse. So he's got 1 year left. But again, he's a proven commodity. Florida State needs all the help they can get, and they're going to be running a different defense. So the more guys you get out of the portal, the better. He's going to be probably taking a visit to Florida State, barring something unforeseen. Also, Tony Johnson, receiver. FSU lost 3 guys. You got to bring in somebody. That's cool. Here's the deal. They've got UCF and Miami. He's already got those visits set up. This is a kid that was at Cincinnati. This past season, 48 catches, 449 yards, 6 scores. He's a slot for the most part. But here's an interesting thing. They started him out outside at Cincinnati last year, first 4 games. From game 5 through the end of the year, he had 41 catches, 383 yards, and 5 scores. So that was the last 8 games. He averaged over 5 receptions a ball game. Now, I'm not saying he's going to come in and beat Squirrel Whiteout, but Squirrel can't take every rep, and he can at least help. Not saying he's going to be the main guy. Tony Johnson, I would say, would play 20%, 25% of his reps out wide. And keep in mind, Gus Malzahn, he finds a way. I don't want to call it positionless football because that's a little ridiculous. But at the same time, it's not even legal for the way the snaps work. But he has the ability to maybe play a little bit in the backfield, slot, do some different things because Gus likes to run trick plays. An experienced kid like this that's got a lot of catches, that's played multiple roles at the P4 level, yeah, he's definitely going to be a guy that you could see being used as a gadget. Maybe it's, I don't know, why not something like the Wildcat? Why not something in reverse pass, like throwback pass court? Guys that have more experience, you're going to trust players with those kinds of things. And I'd imagine he's also a candidate to be a punt returner. Slot receivers usually are. So there's value there. Those are a couple players. And ironically, right before I went on the show, didn't have time to get stats or anything else. And just remembering from high school because he played at Jones, was highly recruited, signed with Texas, immediately transferred to Florida. But now he's out of UF. DeAndre Robinson. He's 300-plus pounds, defensive tackle, is highly recruited. He's very raw, needs a lot of technical work, but he's over 300 pounds and he's athletic. Florida State's going to at least kick the tires, I'm sure. Big dude. We'll see, but I just wanted to mention him in general because there just aren't enough guys at that spot. D-tackle is always in demand. There's no doubt about it. When we come back, I'm going to talk about Azareye'h Thomas, Joshua Farmer in the draft, and then a little bit of UF in Miami to finish up the show. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. Good luck to all the former Florida State players that are going to be in the NFL draft starting tonight. It's a lot of fun watching the draft, talking about the draft, tweeting about the draft, giving my opinion about the draft here on Locked On Seminoles after. And I'm going to even go through a little bit of the draft in general, just from the perspective of having some fun. But here are my takes on Azareye'h Thomas. I'm going to start with him. He could go in the late first round, but he's probably going to go second round. I got him about 40th overall. First 10 or so picks in the second round is my guess, but he could get drafted tonight. Here are his measurables per the NFL draft website. 6'1.5", 197, 32 3/8-inch arms. He had 10-inch hands. That's pretty big hands for a corner. Played at Niceville High School up in the Panhandle, one of the better programs in the state of Florida. His broad jump at the draft combine was 10.2. That's pretty darn good. 2024 for the Noles, 755 snaps, started all 12 games, 76.5 defensive grade, run defense 66, tackling 62.5, pass rush 74.3, and covered 78. Only 17 of the 33 passes towards Azareye'h Thomas were complete. 8.3 yards per reception allowed. Didn't give up a touchdown. On a 2-10 team, that's pretty impressive. And he had a pick, and he had 5 pass breakups. In my opinion, Azareye'h, you could probably play him at any spot in the secondary, but I like him at corner the best, but his versatility is important. Length is obvious because he's really long when you look at him. Athleticism is there. But the one thing that's undeniable to me, and it's the most important, it's physicality. He'll come up in the screen game or the run game and get involved. A lot of corners hate that stuff, and I think that's the difference. He'll be able to play in a man or a zone scheme and be involved against a team that might be a little more run heavy. If you're not going to do that, they're going to screen you until the cows come home because it's just like a running play. They're sending out an offensive lineman to go get you. Yeehaw. Azareye'h finds a way to make plays with that. A couple other notes with him. He was the number 2 tackler for the Noles this past season. CFP stats had him with 35 tackles and 17 assists, 1.5 tackles for loss, 4 PBUs, 2 quarterback hurries. Now, the other player is Joshua Farmer. This is a young man that is the enigma. He could end up being an all-pro or a guy that's out of the league in 2 years. I don't know what's going to happen. Last year, I wanted to throw things at the TV watching him play. Make a great play, and then the next play, he would loaf. Drove me bananas. I know a lot of people on Locked On Seminoles YouTube page feel the same way because they commented a lot about it, and they should have. He's dropped a little weight. According to the NFL website, 6'3", 305, 35-inch arms, 10.25-inch hands. His 10-yard, his split was 177. That's pretty good for a big fella. 5.11 40, 29-inch vertical, and his broad was 9.4. Last season for the Noles, 20 tackles and 12 assists, 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 6 quarterback hurries, 17 hurries. It's interesting on PFF. But only 6 for CFP stats. That's interesting. PFF also has him with 6 sacks, where CFP has him with 4. So that's interesting. But anyway, here's the stat with him. This is the question that will probably haunt him if he really falls in the draft. And he probably 3rd, 4th rounder is my guess because D linemen, again, are a priority. If he was a offensive guard, he wouldn't get drafted with what he did last year because there's just a lot more of them. Supply and demand. But he missed 15.2% of the tackles, like just straight up, that he had a chance he should have made last year. That's almost 1 in 6. Now, there's different ways you can look at that. Like, did he just whiff or however you want to look at it? But he was in on a lot of plays where he didn't finish. And he did all the work. I don't know how to explain that because once you get there, of course, you want to hit the guy. So I'm not really sure what the deal was. But he missed on a lot of guys. It is what it is. Ventrell Cypress will probably go late, 5th through 7th round. The corner was a pretty darn good player. Ryan Fitzgerald might even get drafted. One of the experts thinks that he will. Just for fun, I want to run through a few guys that are in the draft. This is one of the mock drafts, the one that I have here. See, this is from NFL.com. This is just their mock draft. And the person that did it for reference is Lance Zierlein. I don't know how it's going to go because this is always so weird. The first few picks are pretty obvious, but after that, I don't know. Cam Ward, he wouldn't have been one of the top 5 picks in some of the other drafts. This is not a deep draft, but he's super talented. I worry about his ball security and him being a little bit loose with the football. You do that in the NFL, it goes the other direction. I think he will lead the NFL in interceptions next year with the way he'll probably get thrown to the wolves with the Titans, but we'll see how he goes. The lock to do well is Travis Hunter. He's going to go to the Browns. He's still the twitchiest kid that I've ever scouted, and I've scouted for well over 20 years. This kid is freakazoid. I think he will be the Browns' best player by the end of year 1. Flat out. I don't think that'll be even that close. The safest defensive player in the draft in terms of I'm just going to do what I do, because, of course, Travis is going to play both ways, is Abdul Carter. He's projected to go 3rd to the Giants. There's nothing not to like about that pick. Safe, consistent. You can always use pass rushers. Good idea. The safest guy in the draft overall is Will Campbell. If New England gets him, you got your next 12 years, you got your left tackle. Nothing wrong with that. Will Campbell, he was my number 1 tackle coming out of high school several years ago, and he is a dude. Absolutely think he has a chance to be a Hall of Famer. And to be honest with you, if he went number 1 overall, for some team wanted to do that because they just wanted to go the safe route, it wouldn't bother me. Ashton Genty, I think he's too hyped because running backs just don't have the value. Some people are saying he's going to go number 5, including this guy, to the Jags. I don't think they should, but whatever. That's their business. Kelvin Banks, I think, is a little overrated as an offensive tackle to be a top 10 pick because he was inconsistent and especially played terrible in that first Georgia game last year. But he's going to go pretty high in the draft. Raiders, number 6 is what this guy's got. Tyler Warren, number 7 to the Jets. If the Jets screw up Tyler Warren, that just shows you that they really are the worst NFL franchise ever. Number 8, Carolina Panthers, Jalen Walker. Love him as a player. He could do so many things. I know he's a little bit positionless. Who cares? It's the NFL. You've got all day to scheme. Use it. Colts, Colston Loveland. Like him a lot as a tight end. The Colts need a lot of help on offense if they want to run the ball. He's a guy that can be really good on play action off of those run plays. He's got great hands, and he's a big target. Not a bad idea. O'Marion Hampton, running back for the Bears, is what this guy got. I don't think that's going to happen, but he's a heck of a running back. Florida State fans probably remember him for all the wrong reasons. Now, to wrap up the show, I just want to give a little bit of perspective here on what's going on from what I've learned, because I always try to stay up with like Alex Dono and Brandon Olson and just news in general about Miami and Florida. Talked a little bit about Miami earlier, so I'll just finish up on them first. Number 1, Miami is in a situation where they stink right now at receiver because of the inexperience factor. It's not a talent problem. It's just all the receivers are freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. How that happens in Miami, I have no idea. But Ray's a junior. JoJo's a sophomore. Nykar's coming back. But they just don't have anything. Like, how does that happen in Miami? I mean, I've even given compliments to Mario numerous times about his ability to recruit. Planning is a part of it. They did not plan this very well. And they haven't cured all their ills. They got CJ Daniels coming from LSU, but he'd still be at LSU or in the NFL draft if that was a good situation. Okay, he was at Liberty, I believe, and went to LSU. He was okay, but he didn't meet the Bell's needs. You know what I mean? Like he didn't strike the bell there. He showed up part of the time. So we'll see. Maybe it was injuries or something else. I don't know. But you can't tell me LSU doesn't know how to throw the ball based on what they've done the last few years. So I got a feeling it's more him. How does that happen in Miami? The other concern I have with Miami, they just lost that corner that they'd brought in from Arizona, the 6'2", 6'3" kid. He's transferred. Okay. Who's playing corner for them and where's their depth? I think they're going to be okay at starter, but if they have any injuries, and of course you got to rotate, and how do you do it when you go against teams that are in 4 and 5 wide? So the 2 spots that Miami should never, ever, ever, ever have a problem at are wide receiver and DB. And those are their 2 problem spots. This is year 4 for Mario. How is that possible? I just tell it like it is. That should never happen at Miami. I think DB will be better than receiver. They've got some guys like OJ Frederick has some talent. He started part of the year last year's prep. He's going to be good. But again, where's the depth? And how come they didn't have more development in year 3? Like they were awful in the secondary last year. There's no excuse for that in Miami. I don't get it. I think it's kind of funny in a way because Miami fans always talk about how they're back every year. They've been back since, since 2004. They've only had 2 seasons where they won 10 games. I don't know how back that is. But at Miami, you should never struggle at receiver or a DB. I'm sorry. And you knew the guys were leaving last year at receiver too. That's especially inexplicable. They were seniors. What did you expect? They were magically going to come back? You can't rely on freshmen who barely played to be ready the next year. And then Malachi Toney comes in, who graduated a year early at American Heritage. Really good player, really good kid. But you can't expect him to be a guy right away. I heard he was the second best receiver for part of spring. That's a problem. So anyway, Miami's in a weird spot. We'll see if they get it taken care of, and they might in the portal, but they should have never been in this spot in the first place. That is poor management. Finally, just want to go over a few notes from what Brandon Olson told me from Locked On Gators. I asked him, I said, dude, how in the world does Florida have 2 commitments? It's Florida. It's the easiest school consistently to recruit to out of the big 3. It's State U, and they're in the SEC. He just looked at me and shook his head, and I'm like, it's Napier. They're getting negatively recruited, aren't you? Yeah. He just kind of mumbled. I did a show with him that I put up earlier today on Locked On the Portal. He's kind of distraught because like they are just fumbling and bumbling along. Got a ton of guys lined up for visits. They've got a really good roster for this year, but there's just no faith from recruits, transfer portal, or anything else, fans, in Billy Napier. That is going one of 2 directions, to the top or to the bottom of the ocean. This is going to be a hell or high water moment for the Florida Gators. They come into this season with another brutal schedule. They play at Miami pretty early in the year as part of it. And you've got DJ Lagway. This is his second year, and he's a special kind of player. If you can't win with him, and with all the talent they have, like we went over their secondary roster, it's so loaded, it's ridiculous. And they were just as bad as Miami last year. They've got more talent than Miami does in secondary, and they still sucked. So Miami hired their DB coach. I don't get that. Another story. Florida is one of the weirdest programs in college football. And I know the other day I talked about how all three of the programs in the state suck. And yes, Florida State still sucks until they prove it otherwise. You were 2-10 last year. You got to prove something. But FSU could beat Miami or beat Florida this year. Wouldn't surprise me. And they're not going to be that great. But does anybody really think that Miami and Florida are really going to be that great? Do you really trust Cristobal and Napier to get it done? I don't know if I do. I would lean no based on what I've just said. I mean, it is what it is. Those are facts. Like Brandon Olson follows Florida religiously. That is his life. And he doesn't feel good. What does that tell you? It's going to be a very interesting 2025. And now that spring's over, we're just kind of waiting to see if they pick up any guys that can change the rosters. But right now, especially with Florida, it's pretty quiet on that front. So it's interesting. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk Noles with me. Please hit that like button, that subscribe. Give me a 5-star review if you're on Apple or anywhere you download your pods. And you can get us Odyssey, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever. If you're going to the gym, if you've got a long car ride, download it, give it a listen. Florida State football whenever you need it at your fingertips. We will see you again soon here on Locked On Seminoles.